For privacy reasons, our videos are presented without the faces of those involved in the Ezekiel Project. We use Laura, our AI correspondent, for this purpose. The scripts for the videos, as well as the results, are manually prepared by members of the Ezekiel Project. Thank you for your understanding.
Welcome to our first breaking news report. This time, we initiated a remote viewing session on short notice and completed this broadcast specifically for it. And with the results that emerged, we don't want to keep you in suspense any longer. The cue, the so-called key for the remote viewing, was sent to us by a viewer from Spain, to whom we would like to extend our sincere thanks at this point. It was a link to an interview with a renowned investigative journalist. Ezekiel, our remote viewer, took it upon himself to delve into the memories and impressions surrounding this journalist, and he conducted a session on the topic that left all of us astonished. After Ezekiel's report, we'll return for a brief closing message. Please remember to subscribe to our channel. Only through your support can we continue to operate in the name of truth and bring these revelations to light. And now, the news, directly from our remote viewer. Sometimes it must be remembered.
Never before had I felt such an intense anticipation for a remote viewing session. This time something was different. A viewer had sent us a link to an interview with none other than Ross Coulthart, the Australian investigative journalist. I have long held Ross in high regard. His voice is measured, his intentions honest, and he stands among the few journalists I trust almost implicitly. In this particular interview, Coulthart spoke with visible restraint, his words carefully chosen. He discussed a UFO, an object so enormous it defied transportation. He claimed to know its precise location, yet refused to reveal it, honoring the trust of a confidential source. This act of integrity only deepened my respect for him. But even though he wouldn't disclose the site, I couldn't help myself. The urge to uncover the truth gnawed at me, whispering relentlessly through my thoughts. And so, I turned inward, to the impressions, to the memories, to that vast, silent landscape of knowing that we call remote viewing. What emerged from this session would exceed anything I could have expected. Not just insights, but connections, echoes, cross-references, and revelations that seemed too vast to fully contain. It began with a date, June 19th, 1956. A day lost to most, but recorded in military archives as the day of an atomic test. The site, Tremouille Island, nestled in the Montebello archipelago off the northwest coast of Australia. The explosion was a spectacle, a 60-kiloton device detonated under military scrutiny, a display of power, a toxic firework that would poison the fragile marine ecosystem for generations. But there was something else, something the military had neither expected nor understood. Beneath the turquoise waters of the atoll, obscured by the interlocking reefs and small surrounding islands, lay a vessel. It was not of human origin, not in design, not in function, and certainly not in purpose. By every measure, engineering, materials, energy systems, it was centuries, perhaps millennia beyond our technological comprehension. It lay dormant, unseen, and unmoving, nestled in its underwater cradle. The atomic blast was catastrophic to more than just the coral reefs. The pressure wave from the explosion impacted the ship directly. Though it was shielded and formidable, the structure sustained significant internal and external damage. Energy conduits failed, stabilizers cracked. It began to rise, slowly, agonizingly, like a wounded beast, and soon emerged from the depths. It didn't rise vertically, but rather drifted southwest, tracing a jagged escape path away from the test zone. It could not travel directly to the mainland. The region was saturated with military radar and logistics units. Instead, it maneuvered around them, finally coming down in a controlled crash along a remote stretch of the Australian coastline, roughly 200 kilometers from the epicenter of the nuclear detonation. The crash site was in one of the most inaccessible and desolate locations imaginable, a forgotten wedge of land between red earth and storm gray sea. There it remained, massive, immovable. The modern world's own Roswell, only far more colossal. Measuring approximately 740 meters in diameter, the craft was a wonder of unimaginable proportions. Not a cigar shape, nor a classic saucer. It resembled a toroidal disc, like a flattened obsidian donut, matte black, reflecting no sunlight. It emitted no radiation of its own, but it bore the scars of the one it had survived. The discovery was not accidental. Within days, Australian military patrols, supported by US and British intelligence, located the object. The area was cordoned off, silenced from the public, and even from many within the military. What lay before them was unprecedented. There were occupants. Not all had survived the blast. Of those that did, their physiology showed evidence of severe radiation sickness, skin lesions, internal hemorrhaging, and degradation of soft tissue. The survivors were taken into custody. 2 distinct species were recovered, one humanoid, fragile and elongated, and the other more insectoid in morphology. The latter never survived the initial encounter. The humanoids lingered longer. They were detained separately by the participating nations. Dying, weakened, and ultimately incapable of resistance, they were subject to interrogation and involuntary cooperation, whether conscious or chemical, I cannot say. The data extracted would lay the foundation for decades of secret programs. When the Soviets launched Sputnik the following year, the Allied governments panicked. There was a real fear the Russians would detect the ship from orbit. Emergency efforts began. The UFO was concealed using immense fabric structures, massive weather-resistant sheets, and covered with red desert sand hauled from the surrounding region. The cover was crude, temporary, but enough to evade early satellite scans. The terrain within a radius of half a mile around the UFO was extensively adjusted. In the years that followed, the operation shifted from containment to integration. By 1967, a vast underground infrastructure had been established around and beneath the ship. Access to the vessel was achieved through long concrete tunnels, heavy blast doors, and elevators bored into the bedrock. Only authorized personnel could enter. Even fewer could enter the ship itself. They called it Naval Communication Station Harold E. Holt. It became a site of continuous obsessive study. The inner corridors of the craft were immense and maze-like. No right angles, everything curved organically, flowing as though grown rather than built. Light emanated from nowhere. Walls glowed faintly when touched. Surfaces shifted. The metal was neither metal nor ceramic, and it seemed to pulse ever so slightly when left alone. Some doors could be opened. Others remained forever sealed. Then there was the surface glyph. In 1971, a symbolic structure was created above the site, a massive geoglyph, visible only from the air. Its shape, the Sumerian word for God. The request to mark the site in this way did not come from the scientists nor from the military, but reportedly from communication with the original occupants or the owners of the ship. A demand, or perhaps a directive. A way to signal allegiance, ownership, or reverence. To this day, the symbol remains faintly visible from satellite images, though mistaken for natural formations or dismissed as geological features. The site has never been decommissioned. If anything, its significance has only grown. Additional tunnels were bored, new research wings were built. The inner sanctum, the heart of the vessel, is now accessed via a winding underground causeway that descends almost 300 meters before reaching the first door. What is known to the public about Trimui is merely a footnote in nuclear testing history. But beneath the surface, both literal and historical, lies an artifact whose existence reshaped not only science and politics, but our very place in the universe. And now you know.
Let us now share a few words regarding the viewing. As always, remote viewings inevitably carry a personal imprint. One's own perceptions, memories, and experiences can subtly merge with what is being perceived and relayed. This is not a flaw, but a natural characteristic of the human consciousness, as it navigates complex, often non-linear information fields. With that in mind, we hope that this particular viewing has been able to bring clarity to a question that has clearly been discussed, debated, and speculated upon for a very long time. It was never our intent to assert finality or dogma, but rather to offer insight, raw, unfiltered, and honestly delivered. The public has a right to the truth. That is something we deeply believe. However, that right must also be weighed against the responsibility to protect a nation and the individuals who serve to ensure its safety. For that reason, not all results of the viewing have been disclosed here. Certain elements, out of ethical necessity, have been withheld, temporarily or indefinitely. We thank you for your attention, for your open minds, and for the respect with which you engage these transmissions. Warm regards, your AI correspondent, Laura from the Ezekiel Project. May peace be with you.